Time now for Media Week with James Manning. And the big news in the media world this week was, of course, Ita Buttrose being named the new chair of the public broadcaster ABC. James Manning, it generated lots of debate because it was a 5-month search, of course. In the end, people are deciding, was she the right pick?
Well, I think there's sort of general support for her, you know. I think, yeah, sure, let's give her a go. I mean, it is the chairman, you know, she's not the CEO or the managing director, so it is, you know, she's a bit of a figurehead, you know, not too involved in the day-to-day, maybe unlike the former chairman, you know. So, you know, people will be expecting her to do that, but maybe she'll have to do a little bit more until they get a new managing director, you know, or a chief executive. That hasn't happened yet.
Sure.
The acting people are doing a pretty good job at the moment. I guess she's appreciative of that. So, yeah, but I think it'll be fine.
Well, lots of people had lots to say about it, as we know. The former ABC boss, Mark Scott, for one, is now Secretary of New South Wales Department of Education. What was his take?
Well, yeah, it was interesting because he was in the role for such a long time as the managing director, and he did a pretty good job, you know. With a lot less controversy during his years, and people are looking to him, I guess, as the model for how it should be run.
And what did he have to say personally?
Well, I think he thought it was a good thing.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, well, not too much over the clip you've got, so let's have a listen.
Yeah, okay, let's go.
Yep.
I think, you know, from what was said by the previous chair and what we could see of the previous managing director's comments, there wasn't, in a sense, the respect for the distinctiveness of the roles of the chair and the managing director, as has taken place in the past at the ABC and is a good model of corporate governance. I suspect in the future, when an expenditure review committee is tempted by a funding cut to the ABC, then they know they'll have to take on Ita Buttrose. And she, I think, will be a formidable advocate for the ABC and a formidable advocate for the ABC's audience, because the ABC's audience knows the ABC, trusts the ABC and wants the ABC to be protected and secured into the future.
So a formidable MD. And of course also people noting today that Ita Buttrose has been honoured by Mattel with a new Barbie doll made in her own likeness, and that's in celebration of Barbie's 60th birthday or anniversary. So there you go. And of course it's also the eve of International Women's Day, and there's been a lot of events this week. We've been taking the opportunity to hear from a couple of women who speak to many Australian women as editors-in-chief of their brands Stellar and the Australian Women's Weekly. Sarrah Le Marquand published a special International Women's Day edition of Stellar this week, and Nicole Byers hosted a breakfast this week where she challenged marketers to better answer the needs of women. So welcome to both of you. Thank you so much. Nicole, starting with you. You were sharing a bit of information with advertisers this week about some research you've done into how advertisers are targeting women. Tell us and share with us what you...
It was a really fascinating study. It was basically 20,000 ads through the whole history of the Women's Weekly. So it was an almighty task to take on, a 6-month task with data company Leader. We're in partnership with them. And what we did was fed those ads through and really saw how attitudes towards women have changed and how they've been portrayed in advertising across the years. And I guess the idea was to see, are we doing a good enough job at keeping up with society and the expectations and the needs for women to be portrayed better in advertising? So it was quite a fascinating study. As someone said, it's quite brave to challenge marketers and advertisers when you're the editor-in-chief of a brand. But I think everyone's very open to it now. It's obviously where advertisers want to be, brands want to be, doing it better. So, yeah, everyone received the information really well, and I think the power of this AI robot to be able to interpret all these ads, interpret the tone, interpret how they were featuring women was quite impressive.
So you were surprised, I gather, that although things have changed, maybe not changed as much as a lot of people, mainly blokes, I guess, like me, who thought maybe advertisers doing a pretty good job, you think there's still a bit of a gap?
I think there's definitely still a bit of a gap. You see some brands doing it really well. I think Nike do it really well. Bonds, Woolworths had a great ad where they had the man as the guy going out doing the shopping rather than the woman, things like that. But then in other instances you still see a lot of that, you know, casual kind of sexism in ads, or women always portrayed with the laundry bag on one hip and a baby on the other, or being the one to tend to the sick child at night. And I think those kind of things probably aren't quite in step with the change that women want, and I think that we need to see.
So, and how optimistic are you about things that will get better?
I'm very optimistic. Just the turnout at this breakfast and the fact that brands now, if they don't get it right, are getting smacked down so publicly, and they can't afford to get it wrong. They need to be right, and it's not just
They take
gender.
that on board when that happens?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
They do. And I think part of that fear is what holds some back from progressing as quickly as they should. But I think we're at that tipping point now where the fear of doing nothing is probably going to be more dangerous than trying something and getting it wrong. So I'm pretty excited to think it's going to change.
Yeah, Sarah, what do you think of all of that?
I think it's great. I completely agree that brands really can't afford to be too thin-skinned about this. They've got to take feedback from consumers and constructive criticism in a positive light. And I agree that I do think we've come a long way. I mean, if you look at advertising, I'm sure a lot of that archival advertising, it just seems like a whole new world. If you look at some of the really sexist and patronising ways that women were marketed to in the 50s and 60s and 70s. But there is still a bit of a legacy where men, particularly as caregivers, are treated as a bit of an afterthought. And we still see ads that are pitched that Dad's babysitting. Oh, gee, I hope Dad can figure out how to feed the kids while Mum's out. It's like, well, actually, I don't know any woman that was born with some innate ability to cook up a plate of pasta. I mean, women have to muddle through those skills too. And I think that it demeans the role that men play as active caregivers and participants in the household, as well as, like I say, patronises women.
Still speaking in media, but off to a tangent a little bit. I just see so many people praising this new cartoon on ABC Kids of Bluey. It's the cattle dog family, and it seems like the perfect father. He's always in there, you know, with the kids, and it's such a nice change. Like, it's amazing how many, you know, these themes are affecting a lot of different things that we're seeing now. I think, and you know, from the little ones right up. I think that I think that's quite encouraging. That
Get
stuff
them
as
while
well.
they're young.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Yeah.
Sarah, as an editor of Stellar, do you share similar frustrations to Nicole that some advertisers maybe don't use the big audience you do when they think, oh well, maybe it's my product's not going to sell to these people when come on.
Look, that's right. I mean, I think for all of us, you've got to go where the people are. And look, obviously there's a lot of value for niche marketing and focusing on small groups. But when you're talking about a mass audience, you'd be crazy to pass up that opportunity. So I do completely agree with what Nicole's saying there.
Especially as we know that women are the ones making the big decisions. That they hold over 80% of the purchasing power and decision making when it comes to banking, finance, automotive, all those areas that traditionally I think advertisers have considered male. And I think it's time to start reflecting that in the way and the places in which these big sectors are advertising.
I agree. I don't think anyone's ever successful targeted a female consumer and lived to regret it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before these sort of unintentional or sexism where people maybe do the obvious things, but do they need to think about the not so obvious things when they're doing their marketing plans and really maybe, you know, obviously get women involved in the focus groups, or if not getting them to do all the work.
Do they not do that at the moment?
Well, that was a big thing that came up, is the diversity in the teams, because it's still in a lot of agencies it's a lot of men of a similar age and a lot of, you know, people of the same ethnicity. So if you want to have diversity in your ads and you want to have equality in your ads, you kind of have to have that in the team of people that are making and creating the ads, because otherwise it can really easily get forgotten, or even worse, can be shoehorned in at the end as a bit of a token move to tick a box rather than some authentic move to be diverse and to tackle those problems authentically.
When people talk about unconscious bias, that accounts for so much of the sexism that we see in our culture. It's not necessarily, you know, I've talked to so many well-meaning men that say, we didn't think that she was not up for the job because she was a woman, but the problem is that you tend to draw from your own networks, and because so many of the big boardrooms in this country, and of course our own federal parliament, is still overwhelmingly made up by men. It is men at the table making decisions, and they're not actively excluding women for the most part. It's just that they don't think about it, and that is exactly what unconscious bias and casual sexism comes about. So it really is about checking what, rather than just imagining in a focus group what a real life woman might think. How about, you know, crazy idea, you actually talk to that real life woman. And like I said,
I feel like it's amazing we got to 2019 before we came to that conclusion.
It's still surprising, but like I say, you really don't even need to look any further than the corridors of power in Canberra to see that decision-making, there's a lot of people still scratching their heads about what happened at the Liberal Party room last August, and I think it's the same thing that we're seeing played out in the commercial market.
I was quite shocked last year to hear that in the top 200 ASX companies there were more men called Peter, John and David in power than there were women. And I think that could be said across a lot of different industries. As politics,
I guess it's all very well to celebrate this week and the day, but it's something we need to do continually all year round. But I mean, both weekly and monthly, you're always profiling successful women. I mean, is it harder still for them to get to that position than it would be for a male?
Well, I think that it is. And look, the classic question that a lot of people will be asking tomorrow is, do we still really need an International Women's Day in 2019? And look, it's a really good question. And the answer to it is that the day that we don't need it, I don't think anyone will celebrate louder than me or cheer more happily than the women that are fighting for equality. Because as long as we need it, then we're admitting that there is still a way to go. So I think, as we've talked about, we've made a lot of inroads in a lot of areas, but there is still an inequality. I mean, there was some research was published this morning that a third of Australian women say that their gender has definitely worked against them when they've gone for a job. Men, interestingly, I think 64% didn't think it was a problem. So again, it is about perception, and we're not trying to, I think those of us that celebrate a day like tomorrow, we're not trying to cast women as passive victims, or certainly not to demonise men, but it is about acknowledging that we do still have a way to go. We've come a long way, and let's just close the gap.
Brooke, I always like the reply to that, what you said, do they still need the day? And someone says, well, blokes get 364, so shouldn't we just get at least one?
That's right.
I think that is always the best response, right?
So, I mean, you did a book, didn't you, on women last year to celebrate 50 Australian women. What was the sort of feedback from that? And is there a commercial market for those sorts of things?
Look, the feedback was really positive, both from retailers and from readers. Look, I think that, you know, and this would be common ground that Nicole and I would share, is in celebrating Australian women. That, you know, there's a lot of great international stories to tell, and we also do focus a lot on telling the stories of Australian men. But I think because so many publications do tend to syndicate copy, or they have international magazines that they're part of, so, you know, they just pick up something from their American or their British counterparts. I think when you're editor-in-chief of a strong local brand, that the onus really is on you to create our own stories and tell our own stories. And we don't see anything tokenistic about it. We just think that that is probably sending a very powerful message, is that when we do tell the stories of successful women across all walks of life, I mean, women working in community shelters and unsung heroes in nursing homes, right through to your big glamorous international models and actors, I think that the one thread there is that we all see ourselves, and that you recognise that however different our life experience, a lot of women say the same thing. There's always that moment where they go, I feel like I'm a bit of a fraud, or the moment that I learned to back myself, or gee, I've really found a lot of support. You know, talking to other women and sharing your stories is really important, and it is really empowering, I think.
Nicole, tell us about that. Just go back to that research. You know, it was a big project. I think you said, what, maybe 6 months to get it all done. And you don't want to use it just this week. How will you use it going forward? Will it be a tool for your sales people, for example?
Well, this AI robot's got so many different sort of possibilities and capabilities. I'm quite concerned one day we'll feed all the covers in there and it'll be able to do my job for me. It won't be needed. But I think the important thing now is to drill down on, you know, we've seen now that we haven't kept up with society. The changes need to come. So I guess it's about how those changes, how to do them together with the clients, how to do them together with marketers, and, you know, rather than browbeating people and, you know, ticking them off for not doing it correctly, but working out what needs to be done. So trying to, I guess, cast forward rather than back as we have been. It's the next step for us.
Yeah, and the commercial implications, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've
listen.
highlighted some areas, and as I said, the response from the breakfast was huge. We've already had requests to do follow-ups and more deep dives for different clients. So I think the possibilities and the hunger there is for that information. I think data is such a powerful tool now. Gone are the days of using your gut instinct, whether you're a marketer or whether you're a publisher. Data research is key to progressing and evolving in a way that's going to keep you in business, I guess.
Thank you, ladies. It's been fantastic speaking with you guys. They do already have AI robots in China, so I hope I can join you guys next time. I may not be here. Thank you very much. So Nicole Byers and Sarrah Le Marquand, thank you guys very much. James Manning, we've got to chat about some ratings, TV ratings.
Sure.
This is week 9 we're up to now, so walk us through what's
absolutely. Look,
managed to make the list.
Been locked at top spot every week this year, Married at First Sight. It's not going to go anywhere until the climax. We're just past halfway through the series.
Oh, so, only halfway. Yeah. Dear God. Dear God.
So there's still lots to go.
I want to try and work out how to block it from my social media feeds, but I think I'm the only one because they're so full. Obviously, everyone's watching it.
The 9 marketing department, it's really getting the job done for them, isn't it?
Oh, my gosh, yes.
The
Can't avoid it.
Just awash with it. 60 Minutes had a cracking episode too. It was the Michael Jackson episode. They had a special documentary sort of look at what went on at the Neverland Ranch. News and My Kitchen Rules still slipping into the top, even though it's not doing as well.
And subscription as well?
Sure.
Here we go.
Look, Supercars, the first Supercars event of the year over in Adelaide. That was the Saturday meet. I'm sort of guessing next week we'll see the Sunday races at the top. Both men's and women's cricket in the top 5 there, which is great to see. First NRL game of the year to crop up on the ratings too. That's not far away from starting, and Gogglebox, of course, a perennial favourite.
I was going to say, when you say, of course, yes, we expect to see it in there, don't we?
We do, absolutely.
James Manning, thank you very much. From Media Week, all the big stories, and to Sarrah and Nicole, of course, as well.